Chapter 6, Lesson 3, Life in Canada. Today's class, our objectives are to identify where Canadians live, to describe Canada's economic and political relationship with other countries, to analyze Canada's peacekeeping role in the world, and to understand the challenges that Canada faces. In front of Mr. Shane, he's got his textbook, but you also have the option of using your online textbook if you need to. The auditory resource right here, if you click on this, will allow you to read through and or listen to each of the different pages that follows. You'll notice that I also have my notes in front of me. In the online version of this, allows you to edit this PDF, add your name and the notes to each section. In the first section today, we're going to read about the city and country life, where the directions are asking you to complete this chart about Canada's major cities. I'm going to fill in the province in each city is located, like the province where it is, what area in Canada is this located in, and then one interesting or important detail about each city. Now, what I like about this in terms of your learning is each one of you has the opportunity to find something different that is interesting or important based on your perception of that information. So you're looking for something that you think is important or purely something that is interesting. Secondly, we're going to look at the economic and political relationships that Canada has with other countries in the world, the United States, Britain, and the rest of the world, and what role it plays. You're going to use your textbook to make notes about each of the following relationships. So as you're reading, you're going to jot down in this. You can write out as sentences, or you can put this into a bulleted or just using your little tab here, points to fill in information for each of those categories. The last section asks us to take a look at the challenges that are facing the country of Canada, and it says, as you read, complete the diagram showing some of the causes and effects of the challenges that face Canada. In this case, it's reversing this skill that we've been practicing, and it gives you the effect. It gives you what is the result of what has happened. You're trying to work backwards to find the cause of what that result is in our reading. Let's get started. First section, I'm going to have you read on your own. You're going to read and summarize using your guided reading activity, list those provinces and those cities, and an important detail about that city. This would be a great time to pause the video to go through and make sure that you've got that completed on page 190 and 191. Mr. Shane is going to pick up reading for us in the portion titled Life in Rural Areas, as it offers a lot of contrast between what life is like in these major cities in Canada. Life in rural Canada varies from place to place. People of the First Nations who live in the far north live in the harsh landscape. Many follow traditional ways, although modern aspects of life can be found as well. For example, they may travel on snowmobiles instead of dog sleds. Fishing villages in the Atlantic provinces have suffered in recent years. Overfishing has reduced fish stocks and thus income from fishing. Now, you're probably thinking that, wow, there's a lot of these major cities in Canada, and as you read through these major cities, that must be where the predominant amount of their population is, which is true, because most of these major cities are in that southern portion of Canada to the northern border of the United States, and the largest part of the population lives in this area because it is the most habitable. But it doesn't mean that that's all that makes up Canada, as these major cities and then these massive amounts of rural areas. We're actually going to take a little bit of a chance to travel by train, theoretically, and take a field trip to all these places that are somewhat listed in your reading in terms of those major cities, and other ones are just other areas that are really cool and important to see. So let's take a look. Here, as it's described, since the 1800s, the railroad contributed to Canada's economic development and is the sense of national unity. The vast size of Canada meant that its relatively small and scattered population depended on the railroad for transportation and communication. Today, despite many advances in travel and transport technology, railroads are still very important to Canada. Most rail service in the country is provided via Rail Canada, so the government-owned rail system, a government-owned corporation. Via Rail Canada links Canadian cities from Halifax, Nova Scotia on the Atlantic coast to Vancouver, British Columbia on the Pacific coast. So if I zoom out here, you can see that from Halifax, Nova Scotia, all the way through what would we consider the Midwest, the Prairie provinces, all the way to the western portion of British Columbia, so connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific, a ton of railroad system to go all the way through. Each of these little cameras allows us to kind of look at what these places look like. Here's Halifax, Nova Scotia, located right in this Atlantic region. Halifax is the largest city in the Atlantic provinces of Canada. It was founded in 1749 as British military base. Having one of the world's greatest natural harbors, Halifax has been a busy seaport throughout its history. During the 1800s and early 1900s, Halifax was the entry port for European immigrants arriving in Canada. Trains often took these newcomers to points farther inland and farther to the west. The next stop on our tour takes us to Montreal in Quebec. Montreal, Canada's second largest city, is rich in history and culture. Founded as French Catholic mission in 1642, Montreal today is the second largest French-speaking city in the world after Paris, France. The district of Old Montreal is a historic area of churches, shops, and residences along the St. Lawrence River. Montreal's Victoria Bridge opened in 1859, becoming the first bridge to span the river. It made Montreal an important railway hub during the 1800s. Next on our travel through what was the eastern portion of Canada takes us to Toronto in Ontario. Located on the northwest shore of Lake Ontario, Toronto is Canada's most populous city and major center of business. Toronto has more than 80 ethnic communities, making it one of the most culturally and ethnically diverse cities in the world. Among the skyscrapers that fill Toronto's lakefront is the CN Tower, about 1,800 feet high. The second tallest freestanding structure in North America is named CN, refers to Canadian National, the railway company that built the tower in the mid-1970s. Next, we're moving further inland and further west. Western Ontario. A journey across Canada on a passenger train can be the experience of a lifetime. Such a train trip covers nearly 3,950 miles and passes through some of North America's most exciting cities and travel spots. We're moving further west into Manitoba. Prairie Town in Manitoba. The province of Manitoba is the gateway to Canada's west. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Transcontinental Railroad brought many immigrants to Manitoba and the other prairie provinces of Saskatchewan and Alberta. The newcomers built farms and settlements on the western grasslands. Today, grain elevators and silos rise above many wheat-producing communities in rural Manitoba. You can see this is more rural of an area in this province prairie area or prairie province area. We've got mostly flat land, which provides a beneficial landscape for farming. If you go north, you're up into the Hudson Bay area and the Canadian Shield, that is this massive plateau in this area. You go further north, you're into Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, this area that is perennially frozen all throughout the year. We're going to go further west on our railroad trip into Alberta. Banff National Park in the Canadian Rockies. Located in the Rocky Mountains on Alberta's western border of British Columbia, the Banff National Park is a vast scenic area of mountains, lakes, rivers, and wildlife. It is Canada's oldest national park, set up in 1885 after the Transcontinental Canadian Railway was completed. During the late 1800s and the early 1900s, Canadian railway officials used photography and paintings to advertise the Canadian Rockies as a tourist destination. They also built hotels and resorts near all rail lines. As a result, many people came to vacation, hike, or ski in the area, and to enjoy the mountain scenery. The Rockies are still one of Canada's major tourist attractions. The last part of our study in our rail trip today takes us to Vancouver in British Columbia. At the western end of the Transcontinental Railway lies Vancouver, British Columbia. Vancouver is Canada's major port city on the Pacific Ocean. Known for its scenic beauty, Vancouver nestles between the ocean and towering inland mountains. Founded in 1886 as a lumber mill town, Vancouver grew rapidly after the Transcontinental Railway reached it a few years later. Today, Vancouver is Canada's largest metropolitan area, west of Toronto. So you've had a chance now to read through the different cities and then take a look at what life in the rural areas is like that is very different in terms of the massive populations in those cities. And I've kind of seen a landscape from East Coast to West Coast of what Canada is like. Where would you want to live if you were living in Canada? Most likely probably in the southern portion because of the climate in those areas, but maybe it's a difference between what you would prefer and what you'd experience. Maybe living in a city is intriguing to you, another big city, or maybe living in a rural area would be something that you'd be interested in trying out. The next portion of our reading comes from the economic and political relationships that Canada has with other nations, and that's our guiding question. What is the relationship that Canada has with other nations? Canada has one of the world's largest economies. It also plays a leading role in many world issues. Canada has close economic defenses and cultural ties to the United States. In the early 1990s, Canada joined the United States and Mexico in signing the North American Free Trade Agreement. This agreement eliminated trade barriers in North America. In 2010, three-quarters of all Canada's exports went to the United States. The same year, three-quarters of its imports came from the United States. Canada and the United States also cooperate in defense. They work together to defend the airspace against possible attack from planes or missiles. They also work together to combat terrorism. Canada and the United States share many cultural features. Canadians watch American movies and television shows. Many Canadian singers and actors enjoy success in the United States. Canadians worry, though, about cultural dominance from the United States. Canada's government promotes the production of Canadian movies and television shows as well. Because we share that border, there's a lot that's happening between our countries, and the most recent agreement isn't called NAFTA anymore. It's the USMC, the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement that, again, extends that free trade between those countries. Canada and Britain. Canada's government is modeled on Britain's. So are its laws, except in Quebec, the province. Canadian culture draws on British culture. Many Canadians trace their ancestry to Britain. For these reasons, Canada maintains close relationship and ties with the nation. The British King or Queen is officially Canada's King or Queen as well. A Canadian official called the Governor General acts in his or her place, though. Canada and the world. Canada is active in many world organizations. It is a member of the United Nations and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. NATO links Canada, the United States, and many nations of Europe in defense matters. Canada has worked in recent years to connect more closely with Asian nations. Canada plays a major role in efforts to aid poorer nations. It has often taken part in peacekeeping efforts. Peacekeeping is sending trained members of the military to crisis spots to maintain peace and order. If we take a look at what is necessary in terms of our notes, you should note that in each one of these, Canada and the United States have close ties. The NAFTA, which is now the USMCA, is their elimination of trade barriers, and they offer free trade with each other. They work together in terms of the defense of our area of North America, and culturally we share a lot of the same type of entertainment between our countries. Canada and Britain, because Britain was the area to settle Canada, and not until later was Canada's independence won for Britain, there is still a strong tie to the Britain government because that's the way in which their government is modeled. Culture draws on Britain, and even the mission of the King of Britain still being the King of Canada or the Queen of Canada still happens today culturally. Number 3 is Canada in the world. Their active participation in NATO. They aid poorer nations, and they're always known for their peacekeeping efforts. The last section is to take a look at Canada's challenges and to try to understand in reverse order how the effect came to be because of the cause that was occurring. Canada's challenges. Canada's biggest challenge might be staying together as a nation. Some people in Quebec want to create their own nation. Canada's constitution guarantees the rights of French-speaking people in Quebec and elsewhere. Still, tension is evident. English speakers have dominated the nation. They controlled the economy of Quebec for many years. As a result, some French speakers felt they were treated as second-class citizens. In the late 1900s, some Quebec leaders launched a separatist movement. Separatists are those who want to break away from control by a dominant group. Voters in Quebec have twice defeated attempts to make it independent. Still, the issue remains unsettled. The government did succeed in giving more power to people of the First Nations. In 1999, the government created the new territory called Nunavut. Most of its people are from the First Nations. The government gave them greater autonomy, that means self-governing, than they had in the past. Environmental challenges. Some scientists worry about the effects of climate change. Milder weather threatens plants and animals that are adapted to the cold or far north. Experts also believe fisheries will suffer further. In addition, they fear water shortages and more extreme weather. Extreme weather includes long periods of drought and sudden damaging storms. Canada's government is taking some steps to reduce its use of fossil fuels such as oil, coal, and natural gas. Burning these fuels is thought to contribute to climate change. The government is also encouraging research into clean energy. Nevertheless, Canada depends greatly on fossil fuels to power its industries, transportation systems, and homes. Primary economic activities such as fossil fuel production are a large part of Canada's economy. Fossil fuel extraction has become an environmental concern in Athabasca tar sands in northwest Alberta. This area has sands located near Earth's surface that contain a form of crude oil that is thick as tar. The tar can be refined into oil, but the process is difficult and requires a great deal of energy and water. Acid rain. Another environmental problem for Canada is acid rain. Acid rain is produced when chemicals from air pollution combine with precipitation. When the rain falls to Earth, the chemicals may kill fish, land animals, and trees. Even when they do not kill living things, the chemicals weaken them. That makes them more vulnerable to damage from pests, disease, and severe weather. Damage from acid rain has been particularly bad in eastern Canada. The government has made efforts to reduce acid rain, but many of the chemicals that cause acid rain in Canada enter the air in the United States. Canada cannot solve the problem without the United States' help. Canada's government wants to reach an agreement that includes tough steps to prevent acid rain. If we take a look at our notes to make sure that we've got those things filled in appropriately, here we're looking at the cause in this first portion that says some people in Quebec want to break away from Canada and form their own nation. Well, why do they want to break away? Well, you have to understand that Quebec is the French-speaking portion of Canada and actually has two languages. Most of Canada speaks English, but Quebec has a strong tie to the French settlement and the French people and the French culture. Therefore, in Canada's overall scope and sequence, their overall view is that it's an English-speaking nation and has ties to Britain, but Quebec has ties to France. Therefore, the people in Quebec are looked at as second-class citizens, hence why they want to break away. In the second portion, it asks us to look at the effect of the government of Canada taking steps to reduce its fossil fuels. Well, why would it want to do that? Why would it want to reduce fossil fuels? It's thought that those fossil fuels that are being burnt are contributing to climate change and maybe causing issues in terms of the overall pollution and the health of the environment in this area. Lastly, Canada's government wants to reach an agreement with the United States to prevent acid rain. Well, as an effect, acid rain is a problem in eastern Canada. It can kill wildlife, fish, and plants, and or weaken them to different types of susceptibilities. Canada can't solve its problem by itself because a lot of some of that pollution comes from the portions of the United States that might be producing those same type of pollutants that then get into the atmosphere that go over Canada, and as they get into the air over Canada, that's where they mix with the precipitation. So our pollution in the United States is dumping into Canada. We've got to do something to help them. Canada can't solve its problem on itself. It needs United States cooperation so that it can reach an agreement to prevent acid rain from affecting not only Canada, but also parts of the eastern United States as well. That should wrap up your notes. Good luck on your quiz. God's blessings.